Who would have thought Tommy Turbo would have value again? We get him at 638 this year, coming off a couple of years ago, average of 83. Who would have thought he'd get down this low? We get an average of 37.6 with a really slow start last year. Let's see if he has any value. We're here with the wing fullback guns, and Teddy is up top there at 777, average of 54.3 last year, which was solid. He has had higher average years, so that presents a tiny bit of value. What we saw, obviously, when they were winning comps and winning minor premierships, making the finals, was that he was averaging close to a 60 mark there. And do we think the Roosters can get back to that mark this year? I definitely think there's a great chance of that. So the biggest things for Teddy is the fact that he's super consistent. The durability is always there. And he's almost always the highest average guy in this position, apart from Tommy a couple of years ago. And guys like Pap and Latrell have been close by. But he's always in that top three. So big things for him, obviously being in that good team. Will the Roosters get back to that point? For his cons, there's really not too much to say. Potentially a slow start to the year last year. We didn't score that well. And he does have a bye in round 4. So I'm going to start to really speak about the byes in a lot of these guns videos, because it's really going to make a bit of an impact on if you select them. Because if you can get a guy all the way through to the byes or close to it, and I think there's a little bit of value in that, in just that stability, especially when you're playing merry-go-round with a lot of the cheapies. And I'm finding wing fullback a very tough position at the moment, just with the fact that there aren't many cheapies that are in really solid roles, and we're projecting them to do score 30 plus, 35 plus. So I think a lot of these guns are going to be super important. So check out and stick around this video, guys. Latrell Mitchell at 777 as well. He's priced at that same mark, the same average. Unfortunately, he's been priced up at. Pros for him, upon his return last year, he did average over 58, so we can see a little bit of value on him, and I can clearly see him being a top 3 wing fullback. When the Bunnies fire, he obviously dominates, and a lot of the other guys do, like Alex Johnston as well, which we'll speak about a little bit later. But Latrell looks like he's had a nice full preseason. I think he can come out and do really well. So if you prefer him over Teddy, they're at the same price. I can see them averaging a pretty similar amount. Teddy somewhere around that mid-50s, and same with Latrell there this year. Biggest cons for him is he's a lot more inconsistent than what Teddy is. Teddy last year wasn't as consistent as normal, but we can put that down to a bit of a low year, and so many injuries in that club. It's hard to gauge their form and get some consistency across the whole team, let alone him himself. Pap is a big one. So 745, we get him at 32k cheaper there than Latrell and Teddy. Obviously the pros, I love him. The luscious hair, he is amazing. Definitely undervalued if he's healthy, but coming off that kneecap injury is to his right leg as well. We're probably not going to see him goal kick. I'm not exactly sure on this, but no real preseason. He's hardly even running at the moment. And yeah, just the health is a bit of a worry. The head knocks, the health with his knee, there's a big worry on Pap at the moment. So I'd be looking to steer clear of him. They have a bye a little bit later, so potentially if he comes out really strong, you can get him in the first couple of weeks, but I think he's someone that you could leave out at this point and potentially get him at some point during the season. Drinky there at 669, averaging 46.8. We spoke about him in the Cowboys preview there. I definitely see potentially some value in their nice early season draw. They have a very late bye, so you could hold on to him all the way through until their first bye, which could be really cool. I definitely think he could average 50 plus with that early draw. Obviously, there's a few things to worry about with him. The fact that he's going to be relying a lot on attacking stats. With he obviously runs the ball a lot, but we're relying on the tackle breaks, the try assists and tries. And if the Cowboys get off to a slower start, then he's not going to score super well, and that would be a massive loss in your side if you started with Drinky and they didn't start so well. Obviously, it is similar to guys like Latrell and Teddy. If their team doesn't go as well, they might not do as well, but they are proven performers where Drinky is not. This is the first year that he's really done well. Yes, he's super talented, but it's a bit of a worry that he could get off to a slower start, and do you even hold him from that point onwards if the Cowboys aren't playing super well? So that's the big one. He's never been a keeper. Ruben Garrick there in our 5th spot, 646k, averaging 45.2. As I said, guys, we'll do my top 5 guns and my value pick as well at the end, so stick around for that one. Thank you for watching all this the whole way through. Pros for him, obviously close to a gun when he plays at fullback. He has had, obviously in 2021, a really good time of it on the wing as well when Tommy is there doing great things. So he's a beneficiary of that, just like Alex Johnston is a beneficiary for Latrell going nuts in that Rabbitohs outfit. Either way, he can have some value at some point, but I just don't see anywhere near it at round 1. And when they have a bye in round 2, it's just silly to even think about Garrick at this point. That's the big worry about Tommy, which we'll speak about in a sec, is that round 2 bye. and obviously his health. Dylan Edwards, a 639, average of 44.8. Obviously great team, great player. Plenty of those things going for him. He's never been super fantasy relevant. He doesn't have those massive scores in the 70s, 80s, 90s that the Latrells and Teddies have. And that's where he ends up with this lower average under 50. If he had those bigger scores to go along with the random 30s and stuff that he does get in a team that's obviously really good and has to share around a lot of the load, he would be able to do a lot better if he just was able to sneak some of those bigger games and really take over. But he's just such a good overall footy player that he doesn't need to do a lot of that stuff. The cons for him, obviously, pretty well at max price, I think. He's never really been a keeper and has a buy in round 3. So we'll move on from Edwards at this point, I would say. Gutherson there at 638, the 43.2 average. The pros for him, he's obviously a super solid player. Captain of their team there. No origin, which is obviously nice, but just not much, to be honest, fantasy-wise. Cons for him, the team can't really get much better than last year, making the final and losing a couple of their really good players in Marnie and also Isaiah Papali'i. So a 45 average for him seems pretty fair. Tommy Trbojevic, we said there, 37.6 average, 638 is his price. Obviously, the pros for him is that ceiling. So he's priced at about a 44.5. So he obviously has upside on that. He's had a few years now where he's averaged 50 plus. He has a massive outlier in at 83. Can he get anywhere close to that? I personally don't think so. I'm worried about, last year he was the $1 million man, and this year, and he had a really slow start, which is why he had such a low average at 37.6. So he's obviously priced much closer to that. So I wouldn't say there's much to go down in his price, but we're worried about his health and we're worried to see if he can actually get cranking straight away from round 1, especially when they have a bye in round 2. So I personally will be waiting on Tommy the first couple of weeks, see how he goes in round 1, if he even plays round 1 as well, and potentially round 3 and 4, and then we can work it out from there. He will have a nice run all the way to the bye round and origin in that case. So yeah, big things for Tommy this year. I'm really hoping, I've called in the hot takes that he would have a great year. Really just can't pick him at the moment. And the team issues, we've got to speak about that as well. They've obviously got some worries there. And with how they ended last year, losing every game, do they come out better? They lost Dez. Too many question marks at this point. Taylor May, so we're 43.7 average there. 623 is his price. The pros for him, obviously really consistent. He had a lot of scores in the 30s and 40s last year. He was able to get 50s, 60s, a bunch of them, but you didn't really see any games under 20 for him, which was really nice. So if you're looking for that in a gun outside back, that they're going to be able to perform really consistently and not have that, give you that big roller coaster, especially for a winger. It's so tough because they can get that 9 and then they'll get that 80 the next week with the triple. So definitely someone to think about at some point. If he has a bit of a slow start to the year, they have a bye in round 3, you could potentially pick him up. He's got the good base, he's got the low missed tackles. But yeah, the main issue, him being a winger in this position. We're looking to get a majority of fullbacks unless a winger has managed to make their way into a really good side and there's potential for them to score really well. Jaden Campbell there at 602. The 42 average was obviously solid, but for him, the main issue is the fact that the news just came out. It sounds like he probably won't be getting the 1 spot. That will be Brimson's. We got Tanner Boyd in at the half spot, and Campbell's probably going to get the bench. So he's going to be an interesting one at some point. If he can play a bunch of games on the bench, have some lower scoring games, and then potentially get a space at 1. If there's, Brimo has to move, if there's injuries, if there's suspensions, whatever that is, and either he's out, he has to move, he can slot into that 1 spot and do a great job because he is super talented. Biggest things for him, obviously, the inconsistency as well. So how the Titans going to go, that's the other question as well. Okay, we got 5 guys to go. Alex Johnston with the 41 average. He obviously benefited from that left-hand side, strong side. Latrell obviously helping dominate there with Cody Walker on that left-hand side. So the try-scoring machine in a good team. And he's just never been a keeper. So not too much to say on Johnston. He will have a run at some point during the year where he will go great, but I doubt it will be from the start. They did have a bit of a slow start to begin. Ronaldo Mulitalo. So 569 is his price. Average 39.9. This is obviously his highest averaging year. So he's super talented in a good team, and he's very streaky. So the streaks can be good at some point. You pick up a guy for a 4 to 6 week period if that team's doing really well, and the Sharks are a great team. So he definitely will have have people talking about him at some point of the year for coming out and scoring really well. But I doubt that he should be in anyone's team from the get-go. I just think that there's better options at this price. You've got guys like Reece Walsh as well. We'll speak about Brian To'o, and then you can go up that little bit higher and get guys like Trbojevic, Taylor May, these types of players for that little bit more expensive, and they aren't, Tommy especially not being a winger. I think he's pretty well priced up, and I'm not sure the team can get much better. So that's that. David Nofoaluma. So 563k for him, average of 39.4. Pros for him is someone that can go really big. He can also go missing a little bit. So how do you want to play that? They're in a better side. He's in a better side. Now the Tigers are improving. Who knows who's going to be on that right-hand side? If Dane Laurie's going to be on the right, if Adam Dewey's going to be there. You'd obviously want Adam to be there. You've got Isaiah Papali'i, who looks like he'll be on the left. So you'll have Bateman on that right side, who's going to garner a fair bit of attention. And I think Noffa can do really well. But he's someone that obviously loves to run the ball. A little bit of a hog that way, which is great for NRL fantasy. And has been a top scorer for years. So if there's anyone at that cheaper price that you'd be looking at, he doesn't have a buy early. So definitely has some merit to start with in a decent side if you see Tigers starting really well. All right, Jake Carraz. 5'6" for him. He came out of the blocks really well. 30-foot, 9.4 average. He's super talented as well. Had a couple of big scores over that 60 mark. Low average of 22 to finish. So that last five games, he averaged 22, which has dropped his price a bit. And I see that as a bit of a win. He was up there in the mid 650s and averaging close to 45. So he definitely has some upside in a team that's better. We're just worried about the second year syndrome. Will that hurt him? He's a big body and has plenty of talent as a running winger out of trouble, and also is able to finish really well. So yes, a little bit of a con is the fact that he's a winger as well. We finished with Brian To'o at 557. He averaged 39, and we get him at obviously a really nice price. The year prior, he did average 58. So is that an outlier? He pretty much averaged low 40s the rest of his years. So you can see last year he played the first couple of games and then got injured and was out till round 9. And when he came back, he just never really was himself. He averaged way less tackle breaks than he did that year before. So many games where he got 10 plus, and he really only did it once last year, I believe. So To'o, I definitely think is a solid option heading into round 1 as that mid-tier guy that could average a 45 to 50. The main worry is the buy in round 3. He is obviously a winger, and he's still priced at 39, which is not super low. Like, he doesn't have a hell of a lot of price to gain, but I could see him being a 650, 680 type of player if he can get up to that 46, 47 type of average there in a really good side. But as I said, the main worry is at round 3. Do you want to grab a winger in round 1 who's not going to play in round 3 that has a few worries as if he can get back to his tackle breaking best? He still did play well in Origin, but for the majority of the time in the Panthers setup, he wasn't able to be as efficient last year. They do lose Kickow on that left, but I think they're going to gain Garner. So do they spend a bit more time on the right? Cleary has a bit more of a full preseason, even though they've won the last couple of years and had a bit of time off. They're really building some nice combinations on that right as well as the left. So very, very interesting. I definitely see a little bit of upside there. And to finish it off, guys, I think I've got the top 5 guns. I think Teddy's going to be number 1 just by a couple of points, 1 or 2. Latrell's going to be next. I'll see Tommy end up with a pretty good average. I'm very worried about how Pap's going to come back in a team that isn't as strong, I don't think. Tommy will really, help that Manly squad. I can see them being close, but I'm just worried about Pap at this point. And I can see Drinky being the 5th best gun this year. Really having a nice start to the year, and if Cowboys do really well, he could average close to a 50, but I can see all the other 4 guys above that 50 mark. In terms of value, obviously I've got Tommy there as some definite value if he can get back to some decent form and get a stretch of games together. And lastly there, Brian To'o, I think, is the value guy on this list. He can probably average close to that 45 mark consistently and have some stretches where he goes nuts, but we really want to see what he looks like in the trials and potentially in round 1 and 2. And do you wait and potentially pick him up in a round 4 if he comes out and kind of hits the 35 and a 45 and looks pretty solid without scoring tries, for example? You can then see that when he does add that try scoring, he will then be able to hit those 50s, 60s and 70s, which will be great for your side.